So, and said probably, there. So, an average African will touch their first computer at 21 years old. If you're a millennial like me, you probably touched your first computer at 22, 23 years old. Uh, that coupled with the fact that software engineering is oftentimes taught in a foreign language, English, for example, which becomes a little bit challenging for us who don't use English as our native language. In fact, I remember when I was running, my goodness, when I was learning Kubernetes, which is a DevOps tool, every tutorial I read had this word called orchestrator. And when I'm watching a tutorial, the guy uses that word. It's like it's nothing. But for me to be able to understand Kubernetes, I first have to understand this word called orchestrator. And I remember even Googling about the word orchestrator. And quite honestly, it made it a little bit easier for me to understand Kubernetes once I understood what an orchestrator does. Um, so software engineering is more software engineering is not always about understanding the syntax, understanding this text goes here. If I want to write a list, I use this, curly braces or whatever. I think software engineering is more of, you can even think of it as a cultural shift, um, programming your mind to think and act like a programmer, like a software engineer. That means understanding the entire concept intuitively and from an abstract level, rather than trying to pay attention to the specific implementations of the entire thing. Um, so that also means spending an incredible amount of time playing and working with the tools that come with uh, playing and working with the software engineering tools, so to speak. Um, so here's some context. So I wake up at 5. I get to work by 7:30. It takes about 90 minutes between my place and work, and in the evening I take 90 minutes back to the house. Um, you know, Within that time, I spend it reading articles, blogs, tutorials, trying to understand the concepts that I came across and were difficult, and catching up on newsletters and whatnot. And when I get to the house by 6:30 latest. I freshen up, I prepare my meal, and I'm on my desk. I call it my home office. I spend about 4 to 5 hours there. For those who know, I have built an app called Okay, it's called Story App. It's for people to earn something from writing short stories. And I'm also currently building another one called Chakula. So a bigger part of the 5 hours after work I spend on building those projects, and some parts of it is on research, studying, and whatnot. So if you're just getting into tech, you need to understand that. You need to understand that this is like a lifelong learning journey. Does that make sense? And if you want to really make something out of it fast, then you need to have the resilience. So there is you need to be resilient, you need to have grit, you need to have dedication, you need to really have that desire inside you that this is what you want to do. That means spending at least, and mark that word, at least 4 hours every day learning, researching, experimenting, building, and all that. Um, I think for us in Africa, we have to work twice as hard, because you're not just going to climb one barrier. You first have to climb that language barrier before now you get to the discipline barrier, trying to understand the entire concept. So that means a lot of tutorials, a lot of articles, a lot of books. You literally have to sacrifice, and that is the word I'm using. You literally have to sacrifice. Um, this video is going to be a monologue, so uh, I'll also give you, some bit of my story and how I got into tech. So in 2022, I was working in a graphic design studio. Before that, I was working in a movie shop. I was selling movies in a movie shop. I didn't know anything about software engineering, and I remember at that point I knew some little bit of graphic design. So I also wanted to get into 3D animation, and I remember watching a tutorial from a guy called Blender Guru, and he had this tutorial about Blender 3D, and he was talking about how you can write scripts to, I can't remember, plugins or something. And once he opened the code editor, and I saw Python. Okay, at that point I didn't know exactly what Python was, and I saw Python. I mean, I just lit up like I don't know, there's just fire in me that went up, and I was like, this looks cool, this looks rare, I want to do that. And so I Google, YouTube, blog sites and whatnot. And at that time I was working from 7 to 8 p.m. and sometimes even 9 p.m. So I will get to the house, freshen up, eat, and then I will sit on my desktop. I'll sit on my desktop for like 2 or 3 hours. Just at that point, I did not really have direction. I didn't have a proper guide of, start here, end here. So I kept jumping from one tutorial to another, one study guide to another. It was super difficult. But in retrospect, the sacrifices I made back then, because I mean, selling movies is not easy for you who have tried that. It's not easy. You get home, you're tired, you just want to sleep. But I said no, and then I just went at it, pure animal instinct. And yeah, amazing fruits came out of that. Some of you have already seen that, you've already witnessed that. If you're watching this for the first time, if you're watching me for the first time, I do have a self-taught computer science course currently on YouTube. We have live classes on Wednesday and Saturdays. After that, we will have a data analysis. We'll also have a web development bootcamp. We'll also have some graphic design, some video editing, lots of cool stuff in the timeline. But anyway, I think my monologue is over. Anyway, if you're just getting started in tech, don't be scared. Just sit down and ask yourself, is this really, really what you want to do? Can you spend 4 hours every day? Not work related hours, your own, how can I call them? Anyway, can you spend 4 hours every day learning, building, researching, anything you can about software engineering? If the answer is yes, then we are on the same path. Okay, I can't say I want to lead you. No, that sounds sounds bad, because I'm also on that journey myself. I wouldn't say like I have mastered the entire thing. No, I'm also learning as I try to help other people, get into tech and get comfortable fast. Yes, so our next class is this Saturday. See you in class.